Thanks so much, Sansom, and LoyaltyOne, one of our gold sponsors. Next up, we have Fiona Chapman from Transportation Services at the City of Toronto. She's the manager of Pedestrian Project.
That's right.
And also, we want to thank the City of Toronto again for being here and providing a couple of the challenges for our event.
All right, so as you're queuing up, I wanted to just mention this is a passion project for us. I work in the public realm section within Transportation Services in the City of Toronto, a huge beast. But what we do is really look at streets and public spaces differently, and one of our strong foci is to begin to promote walking, cycling, use of transit for a variety of reasons that I hope will resonate with most of you. This project actually started in 2012, and we are just about at the finish line. And what I'm looking to the community who's sitting in front of us is to help guide us as we make recommendations about a citywide rollout. So without further ado, let's go. There we go. So what is wayfinding? It's kind of old school. It's a system that helps people find their way around streets, neighborhoods. It makes a city more legible. And in fact, in London, UK, they call it Legible London. But it's a complex mixture of things. You know, the basic thing we all think about, which is signage, naming conventions. What's a street called? What's a neighborhood called? Use of maps. It's also about lighting, street furniture. So where all of a sudden you start to connect, oh, this is the City of Toronto because it's got those same looking bus shelters or garbage cans, things that are going on within our urban realm, public art, which becomes a landmark for you, and then lastly, digital platforms. We're not alone. It's certainly being done in other great cities. And when we started the project, we spent a lot of time trying to learn from other people's both victories and mistakes. And in our case, we're looking for, as I mentioned earlier, an opportunity to really promote walking, but it's multimodal. It's about last mile. It's about when you're in a parking lot, you don't go back and get your car again because you know what's within that vicinity, or the fact that there's a bike share fairly close, or there's a back lane that you can take. So we really want to have people start thinking differently about their journeys and understanding what is in front of them when they don't have a mental map yet of where they're going. We set out when we started the project to have 4 goals, which is quite different in particular from what most American cities have done with wayfinding. Most people think about it as just enhancing a visitor experience, right? So all those tourists know where they're going. And that's great, and that's certainly important in terms of economic development. We also thought about it in terms of, as I referenced earlier, the multimodal piece. This is why London, UK embraced wayfinding, was actually to save transit investment. They realized quickly in their case that they didn't necessarily have to rebuild or add transfer stations if they get people to go above ground and make that little 5-minute trip rather than do it in the underground. And if you've ever been in the UK, in London, that is quite a journey. We have many of the same issues, and certainly when you've got minimal tax dollars and everybody's chasing after it, it's important to invest wisely. The other thing for us was about promoting walking and promoting all of our other neighborhoods. We want people to feel confident that they can easily, happily get lost and they'll find themselves again. This is not a touchy-feely exercise. Really it is. I want people to explore neighborhoods, find out about your city. And you know, if you spend a little money and stop in somewhere and have coffee or buy something or another, all the better. We have a variety of components in our system, but this certainly talks about it. I don't think anything would be news to you. We have, as part of the project, done the pedestrian wayfinding. We have a cycling wayfinding strategy. We've just approved a vehicular destination. If any of you drove in from the airport, I know a group came in from Waterloo. It's just horrible how bad our wayfinding is for people who are using cars. The idea is if we could actually reduce clutter, certainly safer for drivers, but it also might mean that they stop spending as much time in their vehicles and they can get to their destination a bit faster. So again, it's a complementary strategy, and the idea is that it speaks the same language, and up until now in Toronto it has not done so. So that's certainly our objective. Where are we? I describe this as cleanup on aisle 8. We've done our strategy, and that's been embraced by council. That was done so in 2013. We did a pilot, and I'll speak about that a bit more. Post-evaluation, we're now doing a little bit of work. I'll talk about that, and then this is the lead up towards the citywide rollout. The pilot scheme was done actually in the financial district, and it was really based on where we could find partner dollars. I'll show you actually where it does. So in this particular pilot, we had 12 slim totems. So these are the actual signs, 4 wide, 5 finger posts. Here's a map showing the actual locations. I'm sure none of you can read it, but it'll be available online later on. But the point is that its geographic coverage was from City Hall down to Union Station, from the TIFF building over to here, actually, St. Lawrence. And in addition to that, we had a number of complementary partners. So the Astro Info pillars, which are not my favorite thing in the world, but what we did was we swapped out the maps. We also had the TTC as a partner. So we began to do spider mapping with them, and all of the maps that are in the subway stations that are in the catchment area, and then the transit shelters, we also replaced those. And Up Express came on board. So it was really nice to begin to start building this multimodal network. And where we are right now, I mentioned the cleanup on aisle 8, is we went back at that sign. We'd done a big competition about developing it and getting a lot of feedback. So we've just further refined it. Some of it's just basic things, tolerances. But we also wanted to make sure that when we did citywide rollout, that we could find Ontario manufacturers who could build it. It's very high quality. We're thrilled with it. No advertising whatsoever. We wanted to make sure that when we started working with partners, we could afford to do it, and we could do it effectively. So some of it's just basic engineering stuff, right? We needed new base details. Placement guidelines. Where do you stick these things on the street once you've decided that you're gonna put, say for example, a signpost or a totem at this particular corner? We are in a big competition for the public realm. Some of it's people wanting to put out advertising, some of it's our own infrastructure like bus shelters or pools. And then also we've of course got to accommodate all the growing number of pedestrians. Lastly, we had to finalize the map graphics, which is an important part of the program, and I'll talk about that later. And very much where we are right now, which is refine what does this system management and rollout look like for a citywide program rather than just a pilot. So here's where I am going to seek your advice. We have a proposal for an implementation strategy. It's been largely guided by our experts. They're a team, it's an international team based primarily in the UK, who have given us their best advice. We have been taking this out to a variety of stakeholders, people who really, wayfinding is important to them. So people in the tourism industry, the TTC, Metrolinx, planners, so we're talking to all of the key stakeholders, but it's not been a data-driven program. And so we've really been thrilled to have had Gina and Ryan, who I'm gonna pull there they are at the back of the room, who said, why not take advantage of this opportunity to get additional feedback so that when we go to your decision makers, to City Council, we can say that we have the very best proposal and it's as informed as possible in terms of the rollout. And we hope it will certainly influence the success of the program, the ultimate success. So here we go. Excuse me. We've divided the program into both the capital costs and the operating and maintenance. And I'll say in my business, forgetting about operating and maintenance is our Achilles heel. We always want to build it and we forget about the importance of making sure it's sustainable. So we do that in this instance, and I'm always happy to thank you so much. And I'm going to divide this issue into 2 aspects. There's the map asset. What drives the program is the mapping. And then the corollary is the actual on-street signage, what you see when you're walking in the community. The map asset is basically, it's got a citywide base layer. It's something that you would see if you stopped in front of the wayfinding elements, where the kind of the larger map, and then it has what we call a localized upgrade, where you kind of zero in on the information that you need here and now. On the street, we've got it currently rolled out within what we call TO Core, which is the kind of extended downtown. And then again, we want to look at delivering it as well through our partners, Astral, who put out all of the street furniture. So I'm going to talk a bit more about those. Building local maps. There's just 3 examples of how we go about doing this in terms of the data. So we start firstly with the authoritative data sources in the city. So it could be building footprints, names of streets, the network, where's the transit, the like. And what you see is reflected is a map that looks like number 1, really busy and really of very little value to somebody who's stopping and needs information like that. Secondly, we then pull in what we describe as additional points of interest. And a lot of it is non-authoritative or project-specific. And this is based on a fair amount of consultation with partners. So we could be in communities talking to people about what's the most important building in your community, what are you looking at, what's the commercial area that you want to focus or as a destination. And you can see, in fact, how incredibly busy that becomes. And then the last effort is to focus on the content selection. We do this through our map asset guidelines, the tiering, and I always use the example of when I first started this project and met with some tourism partners, and it was a spa who wanted to know if I could provide directions from the expressway to the spa, because everybody's special. And when you're doing mapping, you have to be very, very strategic about what is the most critical information that has to be done, and then to represent it visually. And so just using this example of Yonge and Eglinton, we've chosen, and this, by the way, is just one of our pilots where we're looking at different scales and densities across the city. We've chosen to reflect the Minto Towers as the most visual element. That might not necessarily be the community's desire. Here's where we are. Our proposal is, and this is my expert-driven approach, so I'm really interested to hear what you say. In year 1, that we would do all that base layer mapping. So we have 630 kilometers squared in the City of Toronto that we think absolutely must be covered. That's what it would look like. And this is how base layer mapping can be used in the City of Toronto. So we have parks and trails. If you're going for a hike, you want to be able to see those maps or some of the products that people get printed. Digital apps can be done from that. We have a visitor map that is done, and thousands and thousands of copies are printed yearly. Our bike share program, if you ever stop in front of those and use it, the maps suck, I'll just say that. And we have a cycling app. So we certainly have uses for just a basic base area map, which begins to have common terminology. And this is what it could look like. Then we can come along to develop these more specific, or I call these sort of stage 2 maps, where we could put them on the signs. Up Express is an example, the pillars in the TTC shelters. Our proposal to do that more refined work starts with the pilot, which is reflected with the orange. Is that coming up orange for you as well? It is. All right, and it's currently about 5.5 kilometers. Then we want to expand into what I described as TO Core. This is some work that we're doing currently in terms of trying to keep pace with all of the development that's going on in the City of Toronto. So it's reflected in the pink. And that is essentially, if you look at that, Eglinton, or really it's actually the DuPont and the rail line with some wings out to Lansdowne and then over to Parliament. Year 2, you want to follow transit. And so in fact you see, as you see, in fact even going up with the new Spadina line, going up into York. And we think this makes good sense in terms of the whole conversation we've had about multimodal handoffs. Year 3, I want to blow this out right across the city. And I'm not sure if that isn't too ambitious, but I'd like to be ambitious with this project. When I'm talking about signage, it always follows, and so there's a little bit of a lag. Obviously, you must do your mapping because you've got to have something to put in the signage elements. But ultimately, across 3 years, we're looking at putting out approximately 600 to 650 sign units, and you can see with this what it looks like. We don't currently have the wall-mounted sign. That's something we've just developed. And we've done that in conversations with partners like, for example, the Toronto Parking Authority, because they have a lot of parking garages, and they're really keen on using this for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. But you could also use this when we have really tight spaces and you don't have room, frankly, for one more inconvenience within the sidewalk to get that information. And our proposal, again, is also to use these partners. So we've already got all of these Astral products. And when the one thing that is a little bit of a misnomer is the Astral bus shelters. That 1,200 unit reflects only those bus shelters where at the back of it there is a poster board. We actually have closer to 4,000 bus shelters across the city of Toronto. And inside, there's always a transit map. And so we're negotiating to use that inside as well. So what you start getting is the system becoming more ubiquitous in a very cheap and cheerful way, as well as the Astral units. Here's where we are. This is what we do with the pilot. I love showing this just in terms of helping people understand the complexity. And year one, we want to expand out. So again, I'm in that TO core area with an additional 220 units. That reflects with the green, strands, I guess, is moving across the commercial areas. So the Danforth, the Eglintons, the Bloor Streets and the likes, primarily where we have business improvement areas in year two. And then it starts to migrate further across the city, where we have less density, but I'll use just an example. And we're busy as we talk to stakeholders updating this. For example, the one that is to my left, your right, is the Scarborough Civic Center, where we're starting to get clusters of development. We have an estimated cost for the program. It's not cheap, 9.8 million. It's like the full vision, the development of the mapping, all of the maintenance, and all of the signage going out. We have a proposal about how we'd like to do this. Obviously, we think the city should manage, or I take, based primarily on the work that we've seen in London and in New York City, we feel quite strongly that the city should manage and maintain the map asset for quality assurance, for some of those reasons around dealing with folks who want to put something on the map that perhaps we think is not necessarily in the public good, and because of all the other ways in which we think we can leverage other city products. This is just a sense of how those monies are rolled out. Our model, our business model is that just as we believe the city should manage the map asset, I have the absolute delight. I've talked a lot about the Astral street furniture. The revenues from that come to something called the Public Realm Reserve. It actually pays my salary and a lot of our capital work. And we're making a pitch to council that is it appropriate to in fact draw down from that reserve to fund this work so it doesn't have an impact on the property tax. But the actual signage that goes out, that we think should be paid for by partners. So it could be business improvement areas. It could be something that we negotiate through planning tools. So there's a big new development coming in. Either they contribute towards a fund or they in fact pay for it directly themselves. It could be some of our very large cultural attractions, tourist attractions. So we've identified a number of partners, as well as the transit partners like Metrolinx and the TTC, who would pay for that. So this is clearly a partnership model that would be going forward. And we are at next steps. So meeting, and I think I described that a little bit to you in terms of how we're proceeding, but this hackathon will be something that we'll pull in terms of our, whatever you tell us that we think can amp up, if you like, our current approach, and we'll be reporting to council in November. And we hope getting approval to push out this program citywide. So thank you, On behalf of the City of Toronto, I can't say enough about how delighted I am to have been offered this opportunity. Can't say enough about wayfinding, and you'll just have to stop me at one point or another during the day. But over to you. Thank you.